Good day, Attorney Hannah. Good day, Ma'am Jean. I am Sandy Adeline, and I'm going to report on the Alternative Dispute Resolution, Special Rules of Courts on Alternative Dispute Resolution, AM number 07-11-08-SE. Now, let's talk about the general provisions that form the foundation of the special rules of courts on alternative dispute resolution. Now, what laws or sources are related to ADR? Now, there are several legal references often mentioned in discussing about ADR, but it's important to understand which ones are sources of authority for the special rules or ADR rules and which are related background laws. Now, let's begin with RA 9285. ADR Act of 2004. It is also called as the Alternative Dispute Resolution Act of 2004. It's a law passed by Congress that promotes the use of ADR in the Philippines. So it declares the state policy to encourage parties to resolve disputes through ADR, like number one, arbitration, number two, mediation, or other alternative processes. However, while RA 9285 supports ADR and says, oh, courts should use ADR, this act is not the direct source of authority for the Supreme Court to make the special ADR rules. The act leans on the Supreme Court's power to make rules of procedure and directs that ADR systems adopted by the courts be governed by rules the Supreme Court may approve. Now let's go to number 2 IR of ADR Act, or the implementing rules and regulations of RA 9285. So this IRR explains how RA 9285 should work, but like the Act itself, the IRR is not the source of authority again for the Supreme Court to issue the special ADR rules. It is a guide only for implementing the ADR Act, not a procedural rule of courts. Now let's go to number 3, and that's Republic Act number 876, or the arbitration law. It governs domestic arbitration. So the way arbitration works inside the Philippines, when parties have agreed to arbitrate disputes. But again, similar to RA 9285 and its IRR number in RA 876, it does not itself authorize the Supreme Court to promulgate the special ADR rules. Again, it provides substantive law on arbitration but does not limit the Supreme Court's procedural authority. Now let's go to number 4, that's model law or ancestral model law. So the model law on international commercial arbitration, that's adapted by the United States Commission on International Trade Law. It is recognized in Philippine arbitration law as a guide for international and domestic arbitration standards, and some parts are used in RA 9285. Just like RA 876, RA 9285. Again, the model law influences arbitration practice, but again, it is not the Supreme Court's authority to issue the special ADR rules. So, where does the Supreme Court get its authority? So, the Supreme Court's power to issue rules of courts, including the special ADR rules, comes from the Philippine Constitution. So, that's Article 8 of the Constitution. It states that the Supreme Court has the exclusive power and authority to promulgate rules of practice and procedure. So that's on Article 8, Philippine Constitution. That this means that number one, the court can make procedural rules like the ADR rules that apply in court cases. And number two, these rules must not change substantive rights, so they cannot alter the actual law, only how cases are processed in court. Now let's go to special ADR rules. First, it was approved on September 2009. Okay, the Supreme Court of the Philippines, sitting bank, meaning all the justices acting together, approved the special rules of court on the alternative dispute resolution on September 1, 2009. The rules were not yet effective immediately upon approval. They were scheduled to take effect on October 30, 2009. The reason for the delay is that, of course, the rules must be published in newspapers of general circulation before they can take effect, which is a requirement for procedural rules like this. Now let's go to this part, special proceedings, the subject matter. So we will talk about the subject matter of the special proceedings or special rules of courts on alternative dispute resolution. So this means what kinds of cases are covered by these rules and how they are classified depending on their nature in courts. So yeah, we have summary proceedings. So all ADR cases here are special proceedings. Now, first, the special ADR rules tell us that all cases under these rules are considered special proceedings. So this means that they are different from ordinary civil or criminal cases and follow special procedures set out in the ADR rules. So when we talk about summary proceedings, that is that means that some ADR cases are further classified as summary proceedings. So when you say summary proceeding, it is one that is simpler and faster, designed to resolve matters quickly and with fewer formal steps than regular proceedings. So under the special ADR rules, the following kinds of special cases are summary proceedings. Number one, as summarized there, you have judicial relief involving the existence, validity, or enforceability of an arbitration agreement. Number two, referral to ADR when the court refers to case to ADR because the parties agreed to use it. And next is interim measures of protection. So that is on temporary court orders to protect the rights of parties while ADR is pending. Number four, appointment of arbitrator. Number five, challenge to appointment of arbitrator. Number six, termination of the mandate of an arbitrator. Number seven, assistance in taking evidence. That means to say when a court helps get evidence for ADR proceedings. Number eight, confidentiality or protective orders. Number nine, deposit and enforcement of mediated settlement agreements. Now, all of these are summary proceedings under the special ADR rules. So these are the initial steps or issues that happen before or during ADR, such as challenges over agreements, okay, or court help with arbitrators or temporary measures. So that's why they are handled in a summary or quick manner. Now let's go to non-summary proceedings. So when we say non-summary proceedings, these are also part of the special ADR rules, but they are not heard as summary cases. Instead, they may involve more complex judicial action because they happen after an ADR process ends or involve final decisions. So the ADR rules include the following as non-summary proceedings. Number one, confirmation, correction, or vacation. So when you say vacation, that is setting aside of an award in domestic arbitration. So this is when the court reviews the final decision or the award from a domestic arbitration. Number two, recognition and enforcement or setting aside of an award in international commercial arbitration or the ICA for arbitration that involves parties or issues across countries. Number four, that is on recognition. One, two, three. Number three, recognition and enforcement of a foreign arbitral award. So this is when the court recognizes an award made in another country and enforces it here in our country. So uh, the important thing here is that these are considered non-summary because they involve final outcomes from arbitration processes and may require fuller judicial review in court to decide on enforcing or setting aside awards. Okay. Now, let's have a summary first. So when you say all ADR proceedings, that means all special proceedings under the ADR rules. So when you say summary proceedings, these are the early or interim ADR matters. For example, arbitration agreements, appointment of arbitrators, or preliminary court help. Now, when we talk about non-summary, that's the third one, non-summary proceedings, that's on validating or enforcing final arbitrator outcomes. So that is already on arbitral awards. Now let's go to this part, summary proceedings, service and notice. So this is an important step in summary proceedings under the special rules of court on alternative dispute resolution. That is on how a petition must be served and filed, and how the court notifies the parties about the next steps. So number one is service and filing of petition. So in summary proceedings, before you file your petition, on the respondent or the other party, that means the respondent must receive a copy of what you are asking the court to do before you officially file it in the court. So here's how service works. Number one, we have first that you have the personal service. So the petition must be served personally by delivering it directly to the respondent. The person who serves it must swear to an affidavit explaining the time, number one, time, place, and how the service was done. Number two, it can be done through courier service. So the petition may also be sent by courier, in this case, be signed proof of delivery from the courier. So that is your attachment as proof. Now, if service by personal delivery or courier fails or is refused, the person serving must explain the circumstances in an affidavit or report. So once service is done, proof of that service must be attached when the petition is filed with the courts. So this step helps us make sure that the respondent knows about the petition and the court proceeding. So that's a basic requirement in special proceedings like this. Now, number two is notice to the party. So after the petition is filed, the the court reviews it. So if the court finds that the petition is sufficient in form and substance, meaning it meets the required format and contains the necessary contents, the court will then issue a notice to both parties, especially the respondent. So what's the notice or what will the notice include? Number one, the notice tells us the parties when to appear for a hearing. Next, the notice must also inform the respondent that they have 15 days from the receipt of the notice to file a comment or opposition to the opposition. 15 days respondent enough time to prepare or submit their side, either supporting the petition or explaining why it should not be granted. Now, what are the exceptions to the rules? So there are some cases like referral to ADR or confidentiality protective orders made through motions where the process for notice and hearing may follow a slightly different rule. So why is this important? In summary proceedings under the ADR rules, the respondent must be given actual notice before the petition is filed. So this promotes fairness. Next is the proof of service must be attached when the petition is filed because so that the court knows the respondent was properly notified. Number three, the court then issues a notice of hearing after it checks the petition. And the respondent gets 15 days to file their comment or opposition. Okay, so those are the steps. Now let's go to the next part. Here, summary hearing, summary proceedings. So we have summary hearing, and the next one is resolution. So um, once both parties have been notified and the time for filing an opposition or comment has already passed, the court the court will set a summary hearing. So the summary hearing is meant to be quick and focused, and as far as practicable, it should be conducted in just one day. So the purpose of this one day hearing is not to hold a full trial, but only to clarify the facts that are necessary for the court to decide on the petition. So the things that we have to remember, um, the hearing must be practical and efficient. So courts are not conducting a long trial here. They are only looking for the essential facts that help resolve the issue in the summary proceedings. Now let's go to resolution. So court resolution. After the summary hearing, the next step is the court the action, the decision. So once the hearing is the court shall resolve the matter within 30 days from the day of the hearing. So this means that the court has only 30 days to examine the facts and the submissions and then issue its resolution or order on the position. So why does it matter? Of course, it matters because the 30-day timeline is meant to make an ADR summary proceedings faster and more efficient than regular court cases. So that's the purpose of it. The focus here is on a quick but fair decision. So since these proceedings deal with preliminary ADR issues like arbitration agreements or appointment of arbitrators and other similar matters. Yeah, so as a summary, it only happens in one day as far as practicable. And the purpose is to clarify basic facts only, not a full court trial. You just have to focus on clarifications. Now let's go to the next part, summary proceedings, verification and submission. So in summary proceedings under the special rules of court on alternative dispute resolution, all the documents that the parties file must be properly verified and supported before the court will consider them. Number one, verified statements. When you file pleadings, motions, or oppositions, or comments, or defense, or claim under the ADR rules, it must be supported by a verified statement. So when you say verified statement, it is a sworn statement made under oath by the person filing the document. So in that statement, the person must declare that they have read the document. Number two, the facts they state are true and correct, either based on their own personal knowledge or based on the authentic records that they have. Okay, now on the submission or supporting documents or annexes, your verified pleadings must also include supporting documents, of course, attached as annexes. These annexes are the documents that prove or support your statements of fact. For example, the contracts, for example, correspondence, receipts, certifications, or certificates or other official records. So all these things help the court understand and verify the factual basis of of your documents. Now, there's all what you call legal briefs. It's optional, but it's really very helpful. So it's part of the annex documents. The party may also include a legal brief, um, or it's a written statement explaining, or it's a written explanation prepared by the lawyer explaining the key facts, the laws or rules that apply, and the arguments or why the court should rule in favor of the party. Okay, now let's go to prohibited documents. So there really are prohibited documents. Okay. So the rules do not allow several kinds of pleadings or motions or simple or petitions to be filed. So this is to keep the process fast, focused, and simple on the issues that needs quick resolution instead of complicated procedural battles. So the court will not accept the following documents in cases governed by the ADR rule. So everything is found on the screen. So number one, motion to dismiss. So any request to dismiss the petition cannot be filed as a separate motion. So if the respondent thinks there are reasons the petition should be dismissed, those grounds must be included in the opposition or answer, not in a separate motion to dismiss. Number two, motion for bill of particulars. So the court will not um, accept this kind of motion in summary ADR cases. So a bill of particulars is usually used in ordinary procedure to clarify vague allegations, but it's not allowed here in ADR. Next is number three, motion for a new trial or for reopening of trial. So since summary proceedings are not meant to be fast, summary proceedings are meant to be fast and have no full trial, you cannot ask for a new trial or reopening of trial in these ADR cases. Number four, petition of relief for relief from judgment. So you cannot petition asking the court to relieve you from a judgment in the summary ADR proceedings because there is no formal trial judgment in these types of cases. Number five, motion for extension. So generally, motions for extension of time are not followed in ADR summary cases. The only exception is when an extra ex parte temporary order of protection or a temporary protective order issued without notifying the other party has been granted. So in that one case, the court may consider an extension because the other party is still protected from delay. And number six, rejoinder to reply. So once a party files a reply, that is the last pleading, they can file in a summary ADR proceeding. So there's no rejoinder or a second reply. Number seven, motion to declare a party in default. So the court will not accept a motion asking it to declare the other party in default in summary ADR cases. And lastly, any other pleading specifically disallowed. So if the ADR rules say that particular type of document is not allowed, the court will not accept it, even if it's not listed above here. Now, fundamental principles of ADR rules. So these principles guide how the special rules of court on alternative dispute resolution work. So these principles help us understand why the rules are written the way they are and what the values they promote. Number one, self-determination, party autonomy, and promotion of ADR. So one of the most important principles is the promotion of ADR, of course, as a valid and useful way to resolve disputes, along with respect for parties' autonomy. So this means that the rules support the freedom of the parties to make their own arrangements about how their disputes should be resolved with minimal interference by the courts. So, in other words, the special rules, ADR rules, encourage parties to number one, decide how they want their disputes to be resolved. Number two, ADR methods like arbitration, mediation, and yeah, cooperate with each other with the least possible court involvement because court is really very expensive. A case is really very expensive. So, number two, preference for arbitration. This is a policy in favor of arbitration, meaning to say that if the parties have agreed to arbitrate, the court generally leans toward referring them to arbitration rather than handling the dispute in regular court trial. So, the principle means that when there is a valid arbitration agreement, the courts respects that agreement and encourage the parties to settle disputes through not chosen method. Next is the doctrine of separability and severability. So, according to this doctrine, the arbitration clause contained in a contract is treated as a separate independent agreement from the rest of the contract. So this is very important because even yeah, because even from the contract, sorry, yeah, so still be valid and enforceable in its own. So let's go to. I'm so sorry, I got my battery is already low. Okay, let's go to number four. Freedom to agree in on procedure in arbitral proceedings. So this is the parties to decide for the rules apply or allow the parties to decide for themselves and how arbitration should be conducted. This means that they can agree on things like how many arbitrators there will be, how hearings will be conducted, or what language will be used, the timetable for the proceedings. Next is the competence principle. So what does it mean? Uh, it's the arbitral tribunal has the first chance to decide its own jurisdiction, including questions about whether it has the power to hear the dispute or whether the arbitration agreement itself is valid. So courts are here instructed to practical judicial restraint. So that means to say, if an issue about jurisdiction or validity of the arbitration agreement is brought to them, they should generally let the arbitral tribunal decide first before stepping in. Next is no arbitrator shall act as mediator in any proceedings in which he is acting as arbitrator. So this is one of the key principles. The arbitrator or an arbitrator cannot act as a mediator. So in any dispute in which the person is currently serving as an arbitrator, if the same rule applies in reverse, or a mediator cannot act as an arbitrator in case where they were the mediator. So why? Because that will make sure that there's fairness, there's neutrality, there's independence of the neutral third person. So that decisions or The facilitation are not influenced by prior roles in the same disputes. Now, let's go to judicial relief involving the issue of existence, validity, and enforceability of the arbitration agreement. Okay. So it's on judicial relief, are on arbitration agreements. So it is how the special rules of courts or on alternative dispute resolution or ADR handle judicial relief involving the existence or validity and enforceability of an arbitration agreement. That is when parties can go to court to ask the judge to decide whether an arbitration agreement really exists or should be enforced. So we have here judicial relief before arbitration begins and judicial relief after arbitration has already started. So let's have first the before. Okay, so this type of judicial relief can be sought before the arbitration proceedings officially begin. So who can file? Any party to the any party to the arbitration agreement can file a petition with the court asking the judge to decide whether the arbitration agreement is actually agreement actually exists or is valid or can be enforced. So as to when can it be filed, it must be filed anytime before arbitration starts. So this means you bring the issue to court first before the arbitral tribunal begins hearing the case. Okay? So simply before arbitration starts, a party may ask the court, to confirm whether an arbitration agreement is real and should be enforced by the courts. Now let's go to after arbitration commences. So once arbitration has already begun and the tribunal has issued a preliminary ruling on its jurisdiction, a party may still seek judicial relief, but the context is different. So, number one is who can file again any party to the ongoing arbitration. Next, when can it be filed? It must be filed within 30 days after the party receives notice of the arbitral tribunal's ruling on jurisdiction. So here we have Rule 3.1 is a petition for judicial determination of the existence, validity, or enforceability of an arbitration agreement. Now let's go to special court reliefs. Okay, we have existence, validity, and enforceability. So in Rule 3.1, it says that um, okay, here, 3.1. So it defines judicial relief in the context, like a petition for judicial determination of the existence, validity, and or enforceability of an arbitration agreement. Okay, so on existence, is there actually an arbitration agreement between the parties? On validity, is the arbitration agreement valid under the law? Or enforceability, should the court uphold and enforce the arbitration agreement? So when these issues are disputed, for example, when the one party says, "Oh no, we never agreed to arbitration," or the agreement is not valid. So here, 3.1 allows the party to file a petition in court asking for our judicial determination of those points. Now, judicial relief before commencement arbitration. Okay, we have here the requisites. The arbitration proceeding has not yet commenced. Okay, so before the commencement of an arbitration. So it means that the petition is filed before any arbitration proceedings have officially begun. So that is before the arbitral tribunal has been constituted or has started hearing the disputes. And for number two, there is a dispute between the parties about the arbitration agreement. So there must be an actual disagreement or a controversy between the parties involving whether the arbitration agreement exists, whether it's valid, or whether it's enforceable. So that means that one party must actually question the arbitration agreement. If both parties agree to agreement is valid and enforceable, then there's no dispute to the court to decide. So, in simple terms, there must be a real conflict about the arbitration agreement. So, someone must be saying, yes, it is valid, or someone must be saying, no, it isn't. Now, let's go to here filing of petition before commencement of arbitration. Okay, so yeah, once the requisites for seeking judicial relief before arbitration begins are met, or arbitration has not yet started and there is a dispute over the arbitration agreement, the special ADR rules provide a simple and clear process on how to or for how this type of case must be processed or must proceed in court. So number one is the filing of petition, or that is also called as the initiatory pleading. So the first step is for the party seeking judicial relief to the part to file a petition with the appropriate court. So this petition is the initiatory pleading. So it formally asks the court to decide whether the arbitration agreement exists, it's valid, or it's enforceable. So before the petition is filed, the petitioner must serve a copy of the petition on the respondent in accordance with the ADR rules. Okay, by personal service or courier. Next is filing of comment opposition. So that is within 15 days. So after the respondent receives a service of the petition, the special idea rules give the respondent 15 days from the receipt of the petition to file a comment or opposition to what the petitioner is asking. So this 15-day period gives the respondent a fair chance to answer the petition before the court makes a decision. Next, number three is the court action. So once both the petition and the comment opposition have been submitted, the court must act on the case. Yeah, so the court does not rush to decide everything. It gives the arbitration tribunal a chance to rule on its own authority first, unless the arbitration agreement is clearly invalid or enforceable. Number four is relief court action. So this is a very important tool. So if the court makes a prima facie determination, that is a preliminary judgment upholding that the arbitration agreement exists, is valid or enforceable, that decision cannot be challenged by a motion for reconsideration or appeal or certiorari. So that means to say, once the court tentatively upholds the arbitration agreement, that decision stands for now. It cannot be immediately appealed or reconsidered, although the issues may still be raised later in appropriate proceedings like a petition to set aside an arbitral award. So you have there the requisites. Okay, so we have the requisites. The arbitration proceedings has already commenced. The tribunal has been constituted and has rendered preliminary ruling on its jurisdiction. And number two, a party desires to challenge the tribunal's ruling on the issue of jurisdiction. Okay, now let's go to judicial relief after arbitration commences. So that's after the arbitration commences. So when an arbitration proceeding has already started and the arbitral tribunal has made a ruling on its jurisdiction, a party may still go to court to seek judicial relief regarding that ruling. So under the uh, special rules of court on alternative dispute resolution, there is a specific procedure that must be followed. Number one is the filing of petition within 30 days. So the first step is for the party who wants judicial relief to file a verified petition in court. So asking the judge to review a ruling by the arbitral tribunal on a preliminary question of jurisdiction. So that means to say, the tribunal has the authority to hear the case. So this must be filed within 30 days from the receipt of the notice of the tribunal's ruling that the party is challenging. Next is filing of comment opposition. So that's within 15 days. So after the petition is served on the respondent then has 15 days to file a comment or opposition to the petition. So the comment or petition allows the respondent to explain why the tribunal's ruling should be upheld. Or for example, that the tribunal did not have jurisdiction or the arbitration agreement is valid. Next is court action. So that's within 30 days from the submission. Once both the petition and the comment or opposition have been submitted and the case is ready for resolution, the court has acts. And the court is required to render its judgment within 30 days from the time the petition is submitted for resolution. Okay, and then you have there the relief, court action. So once the court has already acted on a petition for a judicial relief filed after arbitration has commenced, you have number one, period for resolving the petition. So you file the papers, the petition, and the comment or opposition, and the case is ready for decision. The court must act quickly. The court must render its service for 30 days or within 30 days from the time the petition is submitted for resolution. So the 30 days to decide whether the arbitral tribunal's jurisdiction ruling was correct or not. So there is no injunction or of arbitration. So here, when the petition is pending in court, the court shall not enjoin or stop the arbitration proceedings. So even if a party joins or goes to court to challenge the tribunal's ruling, the arbitration can continue, including the tribunal's hearing and award process. Now let's go to referral to ADR. So what's referral to ADR? So when you say refer to ADR, it specifically refers to the referral of a pending court action to arbitration. It's not to other ADR method like mediation. It allows the court to set aside regular court proceedings and send the dispute to arbitration when the parties have agreed to arbitrate. So you have their requirements for ADR. So there is already a pending court action. So the dispute must already be before a court as a regular lawsuit. So when the referral request is made, this means in case has been filed and is actively pending before a trial court. And next is there's either a pre-action or a present action arbitration agreement. So there must be an arbitration agreement between parties. This can be a pre-action agreement or a present action agreement. Next is who will make a request. So a party pending action filed in violation of the arbitration agreement may request the court to refer the parties to arbitration in accordance with such agreement. So when to make a request, the request for referral shall be made not later than pre-trial conference and submit an agreement anytime during the proceedings. So those are the requirements. Now let's go to multiple actions and parties. So what do you mean by multiple actions and parties? Okay, so we have here the court shall not decline to refer some of all the parties to arbitration for any of the following reasons. So not all of the dispute subjects of the civil action may be referred to arbitration. And next is not all the parties to the civil action are bound by the arbitration agreements, and referral to arbitration would result in multiplicity of suits. Next is the issues raised in the civil action could be speedily and efficiently resolved in its entirety by the court rather than in arbitration. So referral to an arbitration does not appear to be the most prudent action. The stay of the action would prejudice the rights of the parties to the civil action who are not bound by the arbitration agreement. Now let's go to interim measures of protection. It is also known as, or it's so called as interim relief or temporary measures. So when you say interim measures of protection, these are temporary court orders designed to safeguard the rights of a party while an arbitration dispute is still pending and has not yet been filed or has not yet been finally decided. So these measures help prevent irreparable harm or preserve the status quo so that a later final decision will not be rendered meaningless. So who may ask for interim measures? So a party to an arbitration agreement may petition the court for interim measures of protection. That this means only someone who is bound by the arbitration agreement. So usually a party to the contracts containing that arbitration clause can cause the court for its temporary relief. Next is when can you petition for interim measures? So the ADR rules allow a party to file a petition for interim measures at the different stages as long as arbitration is involved. Number one, before arbitration is commenced. So if arbitration has not yet started, a party may still ask the court to protect their rights while waiting for arbitration to begin. Next is after arbitration has commenced, but before the tribunal is constituted. That means to say, even after the arbitration has started, but before the arbitrators are formally appointed. So a party can still seek interim relief from the court. Now, after the constitution of the arbitral tribunal and during the arbitral proceedings. So once the arbitral tribunal has been formed and the arbitration is ongoing, the court can still grant interim measures, but only when the arbitral tribunal has no power to act on the interim request or is unable to act effectively at the time. So, in short, you can seek interim measures before arbitration starts, during the arbitration, before the tribunal is formed, so or even during arbitration while the tribunal is acting. So as long as the tribunal cannot grant the relief itself at that point. So why does it matter? Of course, interim measures help protect a party's rights while the main dispute is still being resolved through arbitration. So without these temporary orders, a party could suffer irreparable harm. For example, losing access to property or having crucial evidence disappear or seeing the other side delay the process to gain an unfair advantage before the final arbitration award. So these measures are especially helpful when the arbitral tribunal is not yet being formed or when the tribunal cannot be or cannot act effectively on a petition for interim relief itself. Okay, let's go to the next one on the venue. Let's have grounds first. So when a party asks the court for interim measure of protection, temporary orders to safeguard rights while an arbitration dispute is ongoing, the special ADR rules list several grounds that the court may consider in deciding whether to grant such relief. So these grounds show the kinds of situation where temporary protection may be necessary. So the first ground is prevent irreparable loss or injury. Here, the court may grant an interim measure if a party needs to prevent harm that cannot be fixed by money alone or that cannot be undone after the dispute is finally resolved. So, this is often the most common. reason courts allow temporary relief. So, in simple terms, if waiting for the final arbitration decision might cause damage that cannot be reversed, the court can step in to protect that party now. Number two, the need uh, provide the need to provide a security or provide security for the performance of an obligation. The court may also grant an interim measure when there's a risk that a party might not fulfill its obligations. For example, uh, a party a party might fail to pay or deliver goods or perform some critical duty required under the contract. So in short, the court can order temporary protection to ensure that the party is actually or party actually does what it has promised to so that final arbitration award can be meaningful. Number three, the need to produce or preserve evidence. It is important evidence. If important evidence may be lost, destroyed, or become unavailable before the final resolution of the arbitration, the court may issue interim measure to keep evidence safe or compel its production. Next is the need to compel any other appropriate act or omission. Uh, this ground allows flexibility. So the court can order other temporary steps that don't fall neatly under the first three categories but are still needed to protect a party's rights while the main dispute continues. So here, the listed grounds are not exhaustive. The rules say they indicate the nature of reasons the court shall consider, but they do not limit the court's discretion to grant interim relief if other compelling reasons exist. So interim protection orders should be granted carefully, and usually after considering whether the harm is urgent and whether the party asking for protection is likely to suffer injustice if relief is delayed. Okay, now let's go to the contents of the petition. Now, here, types of, hold on for a while. Grounds, measure grounds, yes. Contents of petition. Now let's have the contents of the petition. So you have there the fact that there's an arbitration agreement. Number two, the fact that the arbitral tribunal has not been constituted or if constituted is unable to act or would be unable to act effectively, and a detailed description of the appropriate relief sought and the grounds relief relied on the allowance of the petition. So we have here the different types of interim measure of protection: injunction, preliminary attachment against the property or garnishment of funds in custody of a bank or a third person, appointment of a receiver, detention, preservation, delivery of or inspection of property, assistance in the enforcement of the interim measure of protection. And lastly, rules or procedure. So on the rules of procedure, when a party petitions the court for interim measures of protection or temporary relief under the special ADR rules, there are specific procedural steps the court and the parties must follow. These help us make sure that the request is handled fairly and promptly while protecting the rights of everyone involved or the parties involved. There's notice, dispense prior notice to the party. So after the petition is filed and found sufficient in form and substance, will send notice to the other party so they know about the petition and the scheduled hearing. However, prior notice may be dispensed with if the petitioner persuades the court that there is urgent need for example, to preserve, mm, prevent the respondent from disposing of it, or keep the temporary relief from becoming meaningless. So normally, respondents are notified before a hearing, but in emergencies, the court can act without prior notice if waiting would make the relief useless. Next, comment opposition. So once served with the petition and notice, the respondent has 15 days to file a comment or opposition. So the comment must explain why the interim measure should not be granted. For example, by following the relief is unnecessary or that the requirements are not met. For example, the opposing party has 15 days to explain the court why it should deny the petition. Next, you have court action. So court action, it's balancing the interests. So after knowledge and hearing of the petition and comment opposition, the court will weigh the relative interests of the parties and the possible inconvenience that might result from granting or denying the petition. Next is relief against court action. So it is according to Rule 5.10 of the ADR rules. So if the respondent was given a chance to be heard, then any order by the court, or whether granting or denying the interim measure, is immediately executory. That means to say it takes effect right away, but may still be challenged through recognized remedies like a motion for reconsideration or MR, appeal, or petition for certiorari if warranted. So yeah, this pros- these proceed these procedural steps make sure that the court, number one, gives respondent a fair opportunity to be heard. Number two, weighs the urgency and fairness of granting temporary relief. Number three, issues orders that can be enforced immediately while still being subject to review. These balances the need for speed in protecting rights with the rights of due process. So that's our core principle of the Philippine procedure. And that's it. So thank and that ends my report. So bye, Attorney Hannah, and bye, Ma'am Gian. Again, I'm Sandy Edgelim.